My name is Amanda Matthews, and if you think betrayal hurts, try reading your parents' sworn affidavit claiming you're mentally unfit, while they sit smiling across from you like it's a family brunch. But the day I handed the judge a forged signature they said was mine, while my mother gasped and my father's smirk finally cracked, that was the moment I stopped being their daughter and became their reckoning. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. If you've ever had to protect yourself from the people who were supposed to love you most, this story is for you. It happened in a glass-walled conference room on the fifth floor of the Bennett and Price building in downtown Phoenix. Bright overhead lights buzzed faintly, the kind of space meant to seem neutral and professional, but all I could hear was the whoosh of blood in my ears and my mother's voice slicing through the silence like a blade. "This isn't about love, Amanda," she said coldly, her posture immaculate as ever in a pale gray blazer. "It's about what's best for the family." I blinked, hard. The word family felt like a cruel punchline. Across from me, my father leaned back slightly, hands folded, a smug little smirk on his face like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You've never made responsible choices," he added casually. "This time we'll make them for you." For a split second, I forgot how to breathe. The papers on the table, the petition, the notarized affidavits, the sworn statements from my own parents, blurred in front of me. I had walked into this office thinking we were here to finalize the probate process for Nana's estate. I trusted them. I thought we were going to talk about the house, the trust, the art collection. Instead, I was staring down a conservatorship petition, filed against me. "You're petitioning for control of my finances," I said slowly, forcing the words out. "Because you think I'm what? Emotionally unstable." "You've been overwhelmed," my mother said, not meeting my eyes. "You took on too much after Nana passed and you haven't been thinking clearly. We've had to step in." I laughed, actually laughed, which probably didn't help my case. "You mean when I asked you to help me sort through her estate? When I invited you in, that's what this is about." "You invited chaos," my father said. "Missed deadlines, mismanaged accounts. You're spiraling, Amanda." "Excuse me," their lawyer interrupted, adjusting his tie nervously. I do recommend we keep this discussion civil." I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, shrill and jarring. I looked directly at both of them, people who raised me, who took me to dance recitals and school science fairs, and I no longer recognized them. "This is legal war," I whispered. "And you're sitting there acting like it's Sunday dinner." "Amanda," my mother said, sharp now. "Sit down." But I didn't. I gathered the unsigned documents in front of me, crumpling them slightly in my fist, and walked out. My heels echoed down the sterile hallway like gunshots. In that hallway, under the cold hum of fluorescent lights, I realized something with terrible clarity. My parents hadn't just betrayed me, they'd planned this, with spreadsheets and attorneys and lies dressed up as concern. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I leaned my head against the cool metal wall, chest rising and falling like I'd just run a marathon. Except I hadn't run, I'd been shoved. Off a cliff. They wanted control. Over my money, my decisions, my life. But they underestimated one thing. I don't stay down. Not for them. Not anymore. And I was going to make them regret the day they filed those papers. 3 weeks earlier, in the soft light of a January morning, I sat cross-legged on my childhood couch in the living room of my parents' Arizona home. Nana's house had just sold, her cactus garden out front, her sky-blue kitchen tiles, all gone to a stranger with cash and no memory attached. And I was still mourning her. Not just her absence, but the eerie quiet that followed it. My mother set down a porcelain teacup in front of me. Chamomile. "No honey, just the way Nana used to make it when I was sick or scared." She folded herself into the armchair across from me with the kind of poise she carried even while barefoot. "You're not alone in this," she said softly, cupping her own tea. "We're here to help you through all of it, Mandy." I hadn't heard her call me that in years. I looked over at the folder in my lap, documents from the estate, beneficiary forms, some confusing tax paperwork. It all felt heavier than it should have. I hadn't been sleeping well. Between my freelance work drying up and the guilt of selling Nana's house, my mind had been running on a loop. "I really appreciate it," I murmured, a little ashamed at how much I meant it. It's all overwhelming." My father was pacing near the bay window, looking out at the desert street beyond like it might attack him. "You can't do this all alone. It's not just paperwork, it's legacy, property, real estate. It's not the kind of thing you just guess your way through." "I'm not guessing," I said, bristling slightly. I just needed time. We understand, my mother cut in quickly. It's been a hard year. Her eyes stayed on me just a second too long. Then she smiled. I didn't see the smile for what it was back then. It looked warm, reassuring until you looked too close. It was the kind of smile that forgot how to reach the eyes. That night after dinner, they offered to help with the logistics. Take some pressure off your plate, my father said as he loaded the dishwasher. Get some of these bank transitions sorted. Just sign a few forms, let us be temporary co-managers until things settle. I don't know, I said, hesitating. It's not that I don't trust you. Then don't say it like you don't, he said sharply. The air shifted. Sorry, I whispered. And there it was, that feeling. That awful tug in my gut that told me to retreat, to fold. I told myself it was grief. Stress. I told myself I was lucky they were stepping in at all. So I signed, not everything, just a few permissions here and there, just enough to get the estate account set up, just enough to let them speak to the bank on my behalf. You're doing the right thing, my mother said the next morning as she set the signed forms into a manila envelope. You have a good heart, Amanda. That's why Nana trusted you. But what she really meant was, you're easy to maneuver. What I didn't know, what they never said, was that they'd already retained a lawyer. That, while we sipped tea and packed Nana's dusty attic, they were drafting a petition behind my back. A document full of lies dressed in legalese. They were laying the foundation. Quietly, meticulously, like architects of betrayal, I thought we were moving forward as a family. In reality, they were just softening me up, making me easier to dismiss when the time came. There was one moment, so brief I almost forgot it, when the mask nearly slipped. We were having lunch, the three of us, and I casually mentioned that I'd been looking into reinvesting part of Nana's liquid assets into a mutual fund. My father's fork froze in midair. That's not your decision yet. But I'm the executor, I reminded him. You're young, he said, his tone still light, but his words not. Sometimes people don't know what they don't know. I laughed nervously. Well, it's not like I'm buying crypto. My mother smiled at her salad. We just want what's best for the family. That phrase again, I would come to hate those words. Not for what they said, but for what they refused to say. What's best for the family? Not for me, not with me, just best, decided by someone else, for someone else's benefit. By the time I started asking real questions, it would be too late. They were already 5 steps ahead. It was a Wednesday night when I first let the words fall out of my mouth. I was curled up on the old corduroy couch in my apartment, feet tucked under me, a half-eaten slice of takeout pizza growing cold on the coffee table. My best friend, Trina Monroe, had dropped by after her late shift, still in scrubs, her black curls shoved into a messy bun, and her stethoscope poking out of her tote bag. She flopped down beside me with a sigh and a bag of sour gummies. You look like you just walked through a tornado, she said, eyeing the unopened mail scattered on the floor, and not the fun metaphorical kind. I pressed my knuckles to my temple. It's not even that something's wrong, it's just this feeling, like something's off and I can't explain it. She didn't say anything at first, just chewed a gummy bear like it was a confession. Let me guess, she said finally. More help from your mom and dad. I let out a weak laugh. They've been so nice, Trina. Almost too nice. Offering to take calls for me, organizing things, sending me spreadsheets I didn't ask for. That's not help, that's control dressed up in a beige cardigan, she muttered. Then she turned to face me, her voice low. Amanda, I didn't say anything when they asked to manage Nana's estate stuff. I held my tongue when they convinced you to make them joint on that account. She raised her eyebrows meaningfully. But girl, red flags have been waving for months. And you've been acting like they're festive holiday bunting. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I mean, did you even notice when your direct deposit from your consulting client hit late last month? Because I did. You called me crying at 10:30 p.m. thinking the client ghosted you. It was just a clerical mistake, I said, not believing it even as I said it. Trina tilted her head. Then how come your login was mysteriously locked out for 2 days after that? I frowned. That was. I thought I forgot my password. You didn't, you told me you used a password manager. Silence stretched between us. I looked down at the chipped polish on my thumbnail. And your insurance, she pressed. When you tried to refill your antidepressants and the pharmacist told you your coverage changed, that was weeks ago, Amanda, I swallowed. They said it was just a processing error, Trina scoffed. Your parents are processing a lot of errors, apparently. I didn't want to believe her, truly. My brain was still trying to make it make sense, but it was getting harder to chalk it up to coincidences. And what about the electric bill? She added. You said you got a shut-off notice last month, and I saw you pay that bill. I was sitting right here. I blinked. The notice had come in the mail, but I never found the original payment confirmation in my inbox. I'd assumed it hadn't gone through. I thought I messed it up. Trina leaned in, her voice gentler now. You always think you messed it up. But what if you didn't? My heart thudded. It's like you've been shrinking yourself, she said softly, second-guessing everything. And you used to be the most organized person I knew. You had color-coded planners, Amanda. I still do, I whispered, pointing to the shelf. But even as I said it, I realized I hadn't opened the planner in weeks. Not since the funeral. Trina reached over, squeezing my hand. I'm not saying they're out to get you. I'm saying they've already decided you're not competent. And they're slowly building a case without telling you. My eyes welled up, not from fear, but from a quiet, sharp betrayal blooming just beneath the surface. Because deep down some part of me had felt it too. But they're my parents, I said, the words small and raw. I know, she said. And they've weaponized that. The room felt too still. Even the ticking wall clock sounded louder than usual. I looked around my apartment, my safe space, my inherited furniture, the framed photos of Nana and me at the Grand Canyon, and realized how quickly it had all begun to shift, how I'd let them into everything. I think I need to look into this more, I murmured. Trina nodded. Start with your email and check your spam folder, I laughed shakily. What, you think they've got phishing scams now too? I think people slip up in weird ways, she said. Especially when they're overconfident. And I know your mom, she's not tech-savvy enough to hide all her tracks. I paused. Do you really think they're planning something serious? Trina didn't flinch. I think they already have. It was supposed to be a quick errand. Just a routine scan through my email inbox for a missing receipt from a home goods store. I'd ordered blackout curtains for the guest room, back when I still thought my parents might come stay with me for a few days to help with estate errands. I hadn't gotten the package, and it had slipped my mind until that morning, so I opened my email. Then I remembered what Trina had said, check your spam folder. I clicked, mostly out of curiosity, half expecting junk offers or phishing scams, but one message stood out. Subject line, your joint account permissions have been updated. Sender, notification at Arizona Credit Union. Org, it had arrived over 2 weeks ago. I clicked it open. This is to confirm that changes have been made to account *7493. Beneficiary and shared user permissions have been modified. If you did not authorize this change, contact us immediately. I stared at the screen. That's Nana's estate account. I never made changes. And the shared user listed on that account had always been just me, until I added my mother temporarily to help transfer funds to the trust. I clicked the link to view changes. Redirected to a secure login. My login, the same one I hadn't used in weeks because I assumed things were running smoothly. I froze, then moved, quickly. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I logged into the credit union portal, heart pounding. I navigated to the account history, ignoring the pit in my stomach. There it was, shared access modified. New email linked, ematthew67@AOL.com, my mother's. Access granted. View, withdraw, and beneficiary update rights. What? I clicked the audit log. The system documented every login, every change, every device used. There were logins from IP addresses I didn't recognize, once from their home Wi-Fi, once from my dad's office. At least 7 unauthorized logins in the last 30 days. And then I saw the line that made my stomach drop. Primary beneficiary changed, from Amanda Matthews to Robert Matthews and Alina Matthews, 50-50. Effective January 23. They changed the beneficiary. Of Nana's estate, they'd rewritten my inheritance while smiling at me over chamomile tea. My breath turned shallow. I took screenshots, every page, every log entry. My hand trembled as I clicked through the data. Then I opened my external drive and saved it all, twice. I picked up my phone and dialed Trina. Hey, they've been inside everything, I said, barely able to get the words out. My accounts. The estate. They changed the beneficiary information. There was silence on the line. Then, Amanda, are you somewhere safe? I laughed, a short, breathless sound. I'm in my living room. Stay there, I'm coming over, we're locking this all down right now. As I waited for her, I kept digging. I opened my insurance portal. Sure enough, policyholder contact information had been updated in January. The phone number wasn't mine, It was my father's. My stomach turned. When Trina arrived, she had her laptop and a look in her eyes that meant she wasn't taking prisoners. Okay, she said, already typing. We document everything. You're going to download statements for the last 90 days, credit union, insurance, utilities, anything you gave them access to. I nodded, numb but focused. This is what they wanted, control. No, she said firmly. This is fraud, this is theft, and we're going to prove it. We worked side by side for hours. We built folders, labeled files, took photos of every suspicious change. At one point, I opened my notes app and started a list. Jan 10, Mom said, don't worry, we're just simplifying things. Jan 15, Dad asked for last 4 digits of my SSN. Feb 2, estate statement didn't arrive in the mail. Each memory turned sharp under the light of hindsight. I hadn't missed the signs, I'd ignored them. This is enough to go to a lawyer, right? I asked quietly. Trina paused, then said, oh yeah. And not just any lawyer. We need someone who's dealt with family fraud cases before. I stared down at the bank audit log again. My name, erased from the beneficiary line like it had never belonged there. They didn't even tell me. They were going to wait until the paperwork cleared, until they had everything. And then they were going to make it look like I'd been the unstable one. The dramatic one. The unfit daughter they had to protect themselves from. I was done letting them write my story. That night, as I lay awake in bed with the estate documents spread across the comforter, I whispered aloud, I trusted you. Not because I thought they'd hear it, but because I needed to admit that I had. And now I needed to admit something else. I didn't trust them anymore. Not at all. It was raining the morning I walked into Jackson Rivera's office, the kind of soft Arizona rain that never quite commits. Downtown Phoenix looked washed out, muted, like the city was holding its breath with me. I clutched my laptop and a manila folder so tightly my fingers ached. Jackson Rivera stood when I entered. Mid-40s, dark suit, no tie, sleeves rolled just enough to say he didn't perform for anyone. He shook my hand once, firm and brief. Amanda Matthews, he said. Have a seat. Trina filled me in. Let's see what they did. That phrasing alone, what they did, made my chest loosen a fraction. I opened my laptop and slid it across the desk. This is the audit log. And these are screenshots of the beneficiary changes. Jackson didn't react. He just leaned forward and started scrolling, eyes sharp, jaw tightening by degrees. Unauthorized access, he murmured. Multiple logins, IP trail matches their residence. He glanced up. Did you give them written permission to change beneficiaries? No, I said. Only temporary viewing access, and even that was verbal. He nodded once. Good. Good. My voice cracked despite my effort. They're trying to take everything my grandmother left me. Yes, he said calmly, and they got sloppy. He turned the screen toward me and tapped the audit log. This right here, this is gold. Banks don't lie, systems don't get emotional. These timestamps alone undermine any claim that you're incompetent. I swallowed. They filed a conservatorship petition. They're saying I'm unstable. Jackson leaned back. That's a common tactic when control is the goal. Paint you as incapable, then step in as saviors. That's exactly how it feels, I said, like they've already decided who I am. They don't get to decide that, he replied. A judge does, and judges hate fraud. He pulled a legal pad toward him and began writing. Here's what we do. First, we file a motion to freeze all contested accounts, estate, insurance-linked funds, anything they touched. That stops further damage. And the petition? I asked. We counterclaim, he said. Financial exploitation, coercion, unauthorized access. If they want court, we give them court. My hands trembled as he slid the papers toward me. This freezes everything, I asked. Effective immediately once filed. I exhaled slowly. For the first time since the lawyer's office blow-up, I felt something unfamiliar, control. Read it, he said gently. Then sign if you're ready. I read every line, my name, my rights. My voice finally reflected back to me in legal ink. I signed. Jackson stood and extended his hand again. This won't be pleasant, he said, but it will be thorough, and it will be honest. I shook his hand. I'm not afraid anymore. He gave a small, knowing smile. Good, because they're about to realize you're not the daughter they can silence. When I stepped back into the rain, the city no longer felt muted. It felt alert, awake. A quiet war had just been declared. And this time, I wasn't walking into it blind. Back home, my apartment no longer felt like a place I lived in. It had become something else entirely. A A command center. A war room. The coffee table was buried under stacks of paper. Voicemail transcripts, bank statements, digital audit logs printed out and annotated. There were highlighters scattered like dropped weapons. Nana's old desk in the corner had become my evidence table, each drawer now a filing cabinet of betrayal. I hadn't spoken to my parents since the courthouse bombshell. I wasn't ready, and honestly, I didn't need to. The truth was speaking loudly enough on its own. I started with the obvious, every voicemail they'd left since Nana's death. I dug through my backups and found one I'd nearly forgot, left just a week after the funeral when I told them I was considering keeping Nana's home as a rental property. "You're not capable of protecting what Nana left you," my father's voice growled. "Let us do it. You'll ruin it, Amanda." My chest tightened as I listened again, now hearing it not as concern but as condescension. As a warning, cloaked in paternal tone, I renamed the file on my desktop. Exhibit A. Then I found a second one from my mother, softer but no less chilling. "You've always had trouble following through. That's not your fault, honey, but the responsibility, it's too much. Let us carry it for you." I paused the recording halfway. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I wasn't even sure what part of me had once thought that was love. Under Jackson's advice, I began organizing everything chronologically, building a timeline of their manipulation. I created folders labeled before access, after access, and tampering evidence. Each time I opened a new document, I remembered the moment I'd trusted them with it. The betrayal stung in new ways. There were small things I'd missed. An email from my insurance company, warning of a login from a new device, my dad's tablet. A forwarded message from the probate attorney asking for confirmation that I'd never received. It had been intercepted by my mother, who replied on my behalf using an account she created to streamline things. I added them all to the file. Trina stopped by that evening with coffee and extra printer ink. When she saw the wall above my desk, she whistled. "You're going full murder board." "It's not murder," I muttered, taping up a copy of a bank statement with a highlighted transfer. "It's character assassination, of me." She dropped into the chair opposite me and took in the chaos. "You're doing what they never expected," she said. "You're making their story impossible to believe." "Because I'm finally telling mine," I whispered. I pulled open my filing cabinet, once home to tax returns and expired warranties, and opened a manila envelope I hadn't touched in months. Inside were letters from Nana. She wrote one every birthday, even into her final year. I flipped to the last one, her handwriting shaky but still hers. "You've always had a mind like a blade, Mandy. People will try to dull it with doubt. Don't let them. Protect what's yours. Especially from those who think it belongs to them." I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. That night I worked until almost 3 a.m., lit only by a desk lamp and the quiet hum of determination. By the end I had 10 labeled folders, 72 printed documents, 9 voicemail transcripts, 4 spreadsheets cross-referencing account access logs. I laid the final folder on top and wrote, in bold Sharpie, "Truth." Then I whispered it aloud, the word filling the room like armor. "You're not taking this from me." It was 12:47 a.m. when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I just started drifting off, wrapped in that strange, exhausted fog where your mind finally stops replaying betrayal on loop. But the screen lit up. Jackson Rivera. My chest tightened. Lawyers don't call it midnight unless something's wrong. I sat up, heart thudding, and answered. "Jackson?" His voice was low but alert. "Amanda, I'm sorry for the late call. I debated waiting until morning, but something just came through. You'll want to see it now." I was already pulling my laptop into my lap. "What is it?" He hesitated just a beat. Then, "Leonard Holmes, your parents' attorney. He sent something anonymously. No signature, no message, just a file link and 2 words. This broke me." I froze. "Leonard, the one who sat next to them during the filing?" "Yes," I confirmed the IP address and metadata. It came from his firm's secure Dropbox. He wanted this to be found. The file was labeled simply, "Matthews Correspondence Internal." PDF. Jackson continued. "Internal email threads, between your parents, dated from just after Nana's funeral through last week." I opened the file. My eyes scanned the top email. From Robert Matthews to Eleanor Matthews. Subject, "Timeline. If we move fast, we'll get everything." "Amanda's overwhelmed. She won't push back until it's too late. By then the estate will be under our control. She'll be left with nothing, and she won't even see it coming." The breath rushed out of me like I'd been punched. I scrolled. More emails. Dozens, my mother replying. She signs things when she's tired. We'll just have to manage her emotional phases carefully. And then, Leonard thinks we should file by end of February before she starts asking too many questions. I agree, strike while she's still grieving. I pressed a hand to my mouth, grieving. They were waiting for me to be at my lowest, counting on it. I looked back at the screen, my hands shaking slightly. They knew what they were doing, I whispered. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. Jackson's voice was calm but steel-edged. This is intent, malice, not just mismanagement. There were attachments, 2 drafts of the conservatorship filing before they even offered to help, messages where they discussed image control and how to position Amanda's resistance as instability. They were going to take it all. Not just the money, not just Nana's house. My credibility, my name. I'll forward this to our forensic document examiner and to the judge's clerk, Jackson said. The fact that Leonard cracked under the pressure says a lot. If their own attorney is jumping ship, he didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. I stared at the emails, the careful language, the way they talked about me like I was a problem to be handled, not a daughter to protect. My father's final message, timestamped just 3 days ago, read, "She'll fight back, that's fine. Let her spend every dollar trying to win, we'll outlast her." My voice was quiet but steady. They don't know who they raised. Jackson was silent for a moment. Then he said, "No, but the judge will." When we hung up, I didn't go back to sleep. I just sat at my desk, arms folded, the glow of my laptop screen lighting my face like a lantern in a dark cave. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like the one being hunted. I felt like the storm rolling in. The next morning started deceptively normal. I was pouring coffee, trying to steady my hands, still running on fumes and fury from Leonard's late-night email drop. Trina had slept on the couch again, insisting she wasn't going to let me be alone in case your parents decide to stop using lawyers and start using doorbells. She was still asleep when the doorbell actually rang. I opened it, hard in my throat, but it wasn't them. A courier stood there in a navy jacket, holding out a slim, sealed envelope. "Amanda Matthews," I nodded, cautious. "Signature here, please, priority legal delivery." As soon as I shut the door, I tore it open. The paper was thick, heavy, my fingers trembled before I even saw what it was. Consent forms. Dozens of pages, copies, not originals, with my name typed neatly across the top. My supposed signature at the bottom, over and over. Each one claimed I'd willingly granted my parents full access to all accounts. Power of attorney. Beneficiary changes. Even consent to represent me legally in financial matters. At the top, a post-it note read, "As filed." L.H. Leonard hadn't sent these to help me. He'd sent them because my parents were doubling down. I dropped into a chair, flipping page after page. My signature was at the bottom of each. A perfect fake, fluid, confident, close enough to pass to the untrained eye. But I knew my own hand. I knew what I hadn't signed. "Trina," I called, my voice catching in my throat. She shuffled out of the living room, rubbing her eyes. "You okay? What happened?" I held up the stack. "They forged my signature," she blinked. "Wait, what?" "They've filed forms saying I gave them full control. They're trying to make it look legal, bulletproof." Her face hardened. "Let me see." She flipped through the documents in silence, scanning each one, then she picked up her phone. "I'm calling Jackson." He answered on the second ring. "Jackson, it's Trina. They just sent forged documents to Amanda." "Do you want me to scan them?" She paused, then handed me the phone. "Talk to me," he said. His voice was calm but clipped, controlled rage. "They mailed copies of forged documents," I said. "Signatures I never wrote, they're backdating them, claiming I gave them full legal authority. Power of attorney, account changes, everything." He exhaled through the line. "They're scared, this is sloppy and it's criminal." "I know my signature," I said. "They're close, but they're not mine." He was already thinking aloud. "We'll get a handwriting expert, a forensic analyst. Do you still have samples of your actual signature, checkbooks, signed letters, anything dated?" "Yes," I said. "Years' worth, Nana saved everything." "Perfect. This is forgery with intent to defraud. It carries prison time. And if we can prove they submitted this to the court, that's evidence tampering on top of it." Trina was already gathering the scanner and laying the pages flat. "I'm labeling everything by date," she said. "We'll compare them to the timeline from the emails Leonard sent." Something inside me was going very still. Not numb, focused, sharpened. "This was the end game all along," I murmured. "They never planned to prove I was unstable. They They planned to make it so I couldn't fight back, paper by paper, lie by lie. Jackson's voice dropped. This is a good thing, Amanda. I laughed bitter. Being lied about in legal filings is a good thing. It is, he said, because it proves they're desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I stared at the forged signature on the final page, and I suddenly understood something chilling. They hadn't just tried to take control of my finances. They tried to erase me entirely, my voice, my rights, my autonomy, and replace me with a compliant version on paper, one who handed them everything. But the real me was still here, and I was about to become impossible to ignore. I didn't recognize the number at first. It came in while I was printing out the forged documents, my desk vibrating slightly as each page slid into the tray. Trina was on the couch scribbling notes on a yellow pad, muttering to herself like a woman possessed. We were so deep in fight mode, neither of us had eaten since breakfast. The phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Unknown caller, Arizona area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me not to. Hello, I said cautiously. Voice on the other end was quiet, measured. Amanda, it's Rachel. For a moment I didn't speak. Rachel, my mother's older sister, the one they never talked about unless it was with an eye roll or a dismissive wave. She moved out of state years ago, Idaho, I think, and hadn't been to a family event since I was in college. Aunt Rachel, I said slowly, my voice uncertain. Yes, she replied. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I saw your name in the court notices. My pulse ticked faster. How? How did you see that? I check the Arizona filings sometimes, she admitted. Force of habit, old lawyer instincts. A pause. Amanda, I've been quiet for too long, but what they're doing to you, I can't stay out of it anymore. I stepped into the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter. You know about the conservatorship. I know they've been trying to paint you as unstable since the day Nana passed, and I know that's a lie. Something inside me cracked open. Why now? I whispered. Why speak up now? Rachel sighed. Because I've seen this pattern before. Your father pushes, your mother rationalizes, they charm people, then box them in. They did it to me in smaller ways. Financial pressure, manipulation. I left, you stayed. I stayed because I thought they loved me, I said, my throat tightening. They love control, she replied gently. That's not the same. I leaned against the fridge. They've been inside my accounts. They forged my signature. They tried to erase everything Nana gave me. Rachel didn't sound surprised. I believe you. Then she added, and I have something else, something you might need. My eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I have the original copy of Nana's will, she said. The one your parents told everyone was lost in the estate shuffle. I have the signed, notarized version from the month before she died because I was her witness. I nearly dropped the phone. What? She updated it after a fight with your mother. Left everything to you directly. No co-trustees. No conditional clauses, just you. My knees went weak. I sank into a kitchen chair. Why didn't you come forward before? I asked. I was afraid, she admitted. Your mother made it clear years ago I was no longer part of the family. I thought maybe Nana changed her mind again, but when I saw the filing against you, I went to my safe and the will was still there. I pressed a palm to my forehead. Would you testify in court? Rachel didn't hesitate. I wouldn't miss it. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. Thank you, I can't even. You don't need to thank me, she interrupted. You're not crazy, Amanda. You're not unstable. You're the only one who's telling the truth. A soft chime signaled a new email. I glanced at the screen. Trina had just forwarded me the scanned copy of the forged forms. My real name twisted on every page, but now I had more than digital proof. I had a living witness. I had Nana's voice, preserved in ink and intention through Rachel. Before we hung up, Rachel said one more thing. I think your parents forgot that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, she said. Sometimes, family is who shows up when the storm hits. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The morning of the hearing, I chose my outfit with intention. Simple black dress, clean lines. No jewelry except Nana's locket, tiny and delicate, resting just above my heart. I didn't want to look angry. I wanted to look unshakable. The kind of woman they swore I couldn't be. Trina met me at the courthouse steps, holding 2 coffees and a clipboard like she was ready to argue the case herself. You've got this, she said. And if you don't, I'll jump across that table and handle it for you. I believe you, I muttered with a smile that didn't quite reach. The courthouse was a marbled colossus, cold, quiet, clinical. Everything designed to look impartial, but it felt like it was built to test your nerve. Jackson was already waiting inside. Crisp charcoal suit, no tie, his usual commonplace but with a glint in his eye. "They're here," he said. My stomach flipped as I turned toward the hallway. My parents stood near the courtroom doors like they were early for a brunch reservation. My mother, ever the performer, wore a cream blouse and pearl necklace, her expression carefully neutral. My father whispered something to Leonard, yes, still their attorney, and both men chuckled softly. I didn't look away. "They did. They really think they've already won," I said under my breath to Jackson. He didn't respond. He just handed me the folder I'd spent weeks building, my life in documents, proof, ink, and timestamps, and the will Nana had trusted to someone else. I took it. When the bailiff called our case number and opened the double doors, I walked in first. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No gallery, just a few rows of benches, the judge's bench looming at the front, and that sacred little table where lives were decided on paper. We took our seats. I didn't glance at them again. I didn't need to. The judge entered, Honorable Marian Eldridge. Mid-60s, silver hair swept back, eyes like polished steel. She adjusted her glasses, opened her case file, and said, "We'll begin with the petition for conservatorship of Amanda Matthews." Leonard stood, polished, confident, like a man used to hearing his own voice fill a room. "Your Honor, we submit that Ms. Matthews is emotionally unfit to manage the estate of Eleanor Price, her late grandmother, and that said estate is in jeopardy due to her erratic behavior, poor decision-making, and personal instability. This petition is supported by multiple documents showing her consent to third-party management, namely, her parents." He handed the forged papers to the clerk like they were gospel. I watched Judge Eldridge take the stack, skim the first page, then pause, her brow furrowed. "Ms. Matthews," she said, looking up, "do you dispute the authenticity of these documents?" "I do, Your Honor," I said clearly. "The signatures are forged. I have never granted my parents power of attorney or account control." "And you have evidence to support that?" Jackson stood. "We do. In addition to a forensic handwriting analysis in progress, we have audit logs from Arizona Credit Union showing unauthorized access from devices not belonging to my client, as well as digital timestamps proving beneficiary changes were made without her consent." He handed our first folder to the clerk. "Furthermore," he continued, "we've received anonymously leaked internal emails between Mr. and Mrs. Matthews outlining a plan to gain control of the estate through manipulation and false documentation. These emails include direct statements that they intended to leave her with nothing." Gasps rippled from the court staff. The judge held up a hand. "Order." She scanned the document Jackson handed her. Her eyes sharpened. She looked back at Leonard. "Mr. Holmes, was this included in your disclosure?" Leonard cleared his throat. "It was not part of our initial filing, Your Honor." Judge Eldridge's voice chilled. "Yet you submitted documents under penalty of perjury attesting to their legitimacy." Leonard paled slightly. "I was provided those documents by my clients." "Noted," she said flatly. She turned to me. "Ms. Matthews, do you have the original copy of Ms. Price's will?" I nodded and stood. Hands steady, I walked to the bench and handed her the folder. "My Aunt Rachel was Nana's witness. She's here to testify." The judge opened the will, studied the signature. She said nothing for a long, tense moment, then she looked up. "I'll allow brief testimony from the witness." Rachel stood from the back of the courtroom, strong, composed, hair pulled back in a soft gray twist. She took the oath and sat, voice unwavering, as she confirmed the will's authenticity and Nana's intent to leave the estate to me alone. I looked at my parents for the first time. My mother's face was ghost white. My father sat frozen, jaw tight, Leonard whispering frantically beside them. And in that moment I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the storm they never saw coming. The room had gone eerily quiet. Judge Eldridge sat with the forged documents in one hand and the verified will in the other. Her gaze flicked between them once, twice, before she slowly leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Holmes," she said coolly, "please approach the bench." Leonard stood, but his movements weren't so smooth anymore. His usual confidence had been stripped away, replaced with something tight around the eyes, guilt maybe, fear definitely. The judge lowered her voice, but I could still hear it. "Did you submit these signatures without verifying authenticity?" He hesitated. "Your Honor, I received the documents from my clients under the assumption." "That's not what I asked," she interrupted. "Yes or no, Mr. Holmes, did you verify them?" "No," he said quietly. "I did not." Judge Eldridge nodded once, then turned to the clerk. Please mark these for immediate investigation. Then she looked at the bailiff. Have courthouse security detain Mr. and Mrs. Matthews pending inquiry into document forgery, financial coercion, and potential elder estate fraud. My mother gasped, visibly recoiled. You can't be serious, she whispered. We're her parents. And I'm the judge tasked with protecting her rights, Eldridge said sharply. Not yours. My father surged halfway to his feet. This is a misunderstanding, this whole thing. Sit down, the bailiff barked. He did. For the first time in my life, I saw my parents completely powerless. No charming explanations, no shifting blame, no exits. Just the consequences of every quiet betrayal they thought I'd never find the strength to name. Judge Eldridge turned to me. Ms. Matthews, do you wish to continue with the fraud countersuit? Jackson glanced at me. I didn't speak right away. My hands were folded in my lap, the locket still resting against my chest. I thought about Nana, about every version of me my parents had tried to erase, about the fear I had swallowed for years, mistaking it for loyalty. Yes, I said softly but clearly. I do, the judge nodded. Then the court will proceed accordingly. 2 security officers approached my parents. My mother didn't even look at me. My father muttered something under his breath as they were led from the courtroom, but I didn't care what it was. The truth had spoken louder than both of them. As the doors closed behind them, I sat still in my chair, heart thudding, throat tight. Not from fear anymore, but from the finality of it all. They had come to strip me of my name, my freedom, my future. But I stood up, turned the truth into evidence, and handed it to the very system they thought would silence me. I looked over at Jackson. It's over, he nodded once. The worst of it, yes, the rest we'll handle with facts. I smiled faintly, then exhaled for what felt like the first real time in months. They thought I'd never fight back. They were wrong. The sun was setting over Phoenix, painting the rooftops in copper and rose, when I finally stepped out of the courthouse and into the stillness of the world again. Trina was waiting for me near the edge of the parking lot, perched on the hood of her car, a chilled bottle of wine dangling from one hand and 2 plastic cups in the other. She waved me over with that knowing smile, the one she always wore when she knew something had finally landed right. You look like someone who just took down an empire, she said, popping the cap without ceremony. I laughed, the sound strange and bright in my throat, more like someone who just escaped from one. She poured us both a generous glass. Well, here's to escape and survival. I clinked my cup against hers, and to having receipts. We sat on the roof of her car in silence for a while, legs stretched out, our backs against the windshield. I let the warmth of the day settle into my skin as the last bit of adrenaline drained from my body. Do you feel different? She asked after a minute. I thought about it. Not immediately, not dramatically. But yes. I feel like I got my name back, I said softly. Like I'm not living under their version of me anymore. Trina nodded. You fought like hell, Amanda. They threw everything at you, doubt, guilt, lies, and you threw the truth back harder. I smiled. They thought my silence meant weakness. But you turned every trap into evidence, she finished, bumping her shoulder into mine. A breeze moved through the air, carrying the scent of dry grass and late autumn dust. I pulled my knees up to my chest, hugging them gently. You know what hurts the most? I asked, not even sure I wanted to say it aloud. It's not that they tried to take the money, it's that they looked at me, their daughter, and decided I wasn't worthy of what Nana trusted me with. Trina didn't interrupt, she just let me speak. They convinced themselves I'd mess it up, that I wasn't capable, and instead of talking to me, they built this plan behind my back. Because deep down, I think they always believed I'd break if pushed hard enough. And you didn't? No, I said, turning to face her. I bent, I broke a little in places, but I'm still here, still mine. We stayed there until the sky turned indigo. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the folder labeled Court Victory, screenshots of rulings, signatures, the final line from Judge Eldridge's verdict. Petition denied, respondent fully capable, counterclaim pending. I saved it as my background, not for revenge, for proof, for peace, for me. Trina reached over and took my cup. You ready to sleep for 3 days? 3 days, I laughed. Try a week. Good, because starting tomorrow, we're throwing out every single thing in your apartment that reminds you of them. Every file, every photo, every polite little guilt trap they left behind. I hesitated. Even the framed family beach photo, she raised an eyebrow. Especially the framed family beach photo. I let out a breath, nodded. Deal. Above us, the first stars blinked into view. It was quiet. No courtroom echoes, no legal terms clanging in my head, just peace. And that was more powerful than any verdict. 1 year later, I stood at the front of a modest conference room in Tucson, the walls lined with folding chairs and cautious hope. The banner behind me read, "Financial Empowerment for Women, Reclaiming Control." It wasn't a fancy venue, just a local library's community space, but every seat was full. Some of the women sat with notebooks on their laps, others with tear-lined eyes and folded arms, each carrying stories too heavy to speak yet. I stepped up to the podium and took a breath. "My name is Amanda Matthews," I began, "and a year ago I learned that family isn't always safe." Heads nodded slowly. No shock, just recognition. I believed I was being helped. I thought love and protection were the same thing. And by the time I realized they weren't, my name was already being signed on documents I hadn't seen. My voice was being silenced in rooms I wasn't even allowed to enter. I paused, scanning the room. But here's what I learned the hard way. Silence isn't protection, it's preparation. For someone else's power, someone else's plan. I clicked the projector remote. Behind me, a simple slide appeared. Know your accounts, know your rights, know your worth. By the end of the workshop, women were raising their hands, telling truths, asking how to check if their names had been quietly removed from documents, how to speak up without losing everything. When it ended, a woman in her 50s with soft gray curls and shaking hands came up to me and hugged me without a word. Then she whispered, "You helped me find the courage to speak up." And just like that, I knew it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming everything they tried to make me question. My worth, my voice, my right to say no. I walked out of the conference center into the bright Arizona sunlight, the locket still around my neck, now resting over a badge that read, "Amanda Matthews, guest speaker, financial justice advocate." Nana would have been proud. But more than that, I was proud. Not of surviving, of refusing to disappear. If Amanda's story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to someone who thought they knew what was best for you? Your story might be the one that helps someone else find their voice.